order for God to exist. Okay, so God has to be outside of space and time in order to create it. However, God also has to be in space and time in order to be a personal God, right? So this wouldn't apply to deism, but for any type of monotheism or even polytheism, which involves personal gods, God has to be able to intervene in time and space and be omnipresent in the case of monotheism, right? Be present in all places at all times. And so there could be a potential worry about how a being could be both in time and out of time at the same time, but then that question doesn't make sense because time doesn't exist outside of time. This is where we get into some logic time trouble. So I'll let you play around with that puzzle a little more if you'd like to, but it's an excellent question about God's relationship to its own creation, right? There are some other funny versions of that, like, let's say the universe or space is infinite, right? But the universe is finite. Why did God create the universe over here and not over here? Silly things like that, right? But the idea is that all of these should have a reason, right, for an intelligent designer. I blame Dante's Inferno. Very good. There's actually a really great, I think, more entertaining version of Dante's Inferno that comes from the Zoroastrian tradition, and that's called the text of Artavirov. No, I'm not typing. Artavirov. And the idea is that this gentleman takes a drug-induced trip to the afterlife and comes back to explain in gruesome detail exactly what types of punishment await certain types of sinners. So again, very much like Dante's Inferno, like, the philosophers and the artists are on a certain level, right? The politicians, like everyone gets their own space. Similar idea, if you engage in certain types of hobbies or occupations or activities, right? But again, it's much more like a Saw movie than Dante's Inferno. So if you're into that sort of thing, it's definitely probably one of the more fascinating religious texts I've ever read in that sense. All right. So we are just at the end of time, but for those of you who want to hang around, I'll just say a little bit more about cults and how they relate to religions. But otherwise, I will see you on Thursday. Okay, have a great rest of your day. So cults, it's fair to say that pretty much every major religion began, thank you, Hannah, as an occult practice. And here, occult is just anything outside of whatever the dominant religion is. And so, oops, I sent that as a direct message. Just type that here, occult. The idea is that once Christianity came on the scene, they started referring to occult practices as pagan religions, right? So the word pagan doesn't even necessarily pick up any specific religious tradition. It's just anything that's non-Christian, right? So occult, non-dominant, pagan, non-Christian. But the idea here is that most cults, other than having a cult of personality, which you could say, and I would argue most major religions are, focusing on an individual, religions tend to share a lot of the same characteristics as cults. Whether or not they're harmful cults will depend on the practice, right? Which again, we can't generalize any religious tradition. There's lots of variety of practices within any one of those. But I think also on that gig philosophy of religion page, I have Ninian Smart's 7 Dimensions of Religion. So this is how philosophers classify something as a religion or not. Right. So instead of just a definition of what counts as a religion, it's like a criteria, right? A checklist. So if it has these things, it's a religion. But the thing is that cults have all those things. And it's really interesting when you think of contemporary implications of what it means to be a religion, like with Scientology getting tax-exempt status. So I'm watching a documentary. Someone asked, I'm watching the documentary about the Synanon group right now, which started out as sort of support group for addicts. And then they turned into a religion specifically for the tax exempt status. And so it's interesting that a lot of cults start out secular, non-religious, and then turn themselves into a religion. And it's really interesting to watch how that happens. All right, I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for hanging out. Have a wonderful day.